following is a presentation of the Retro Network.
Hello, SequelQuesters. This is a SequelQuest Rewind. Diving back into the archive to July of 2016 for this SequelQuest Classic, Episode 22, a sequel to Ghostbusters.
SequelQuest, Episode 22, a continuation of the Ghostbusters franchise.
Welcome to SequelQuest, the podcast where Adam, Jeff, and Jeremy invite you on a cinematic journey to create prequels, sequels, and reboots to your favorite movie franchises. Joined by special guests along the way. SequelQuest is go for launch, so let the adventure begin now.
Welcome to this, the inaugural SequelQuest video show. If you're listening to us on iTunes or any of the podcast listening apps, know that this is a live version on our YouTube page. That would explain why the format's a little different. Now that that's out of the way, let's go around the horn and see who we have today.
Hey, it's Adam.
And it's Jeff.
And I am your host du jour, Jeremy.
There he
That
is.
means host of the day.
Yes,
That
yes.
sounds good. I think I'll have.
Sounds good.
The host du jour, I do speak French. Well, today we are missing our fourth chair this evening, but Justin will be back with us soon. We
Justin.
are... We are off to such a great start.
Absolutely.
Well, let's just start it over. We are SequelQuest, and today's show is dipping back into our 80s classic genre due to the controversial new movie reboot coming out soon, Ghostbusters 2016. Adam, now this is one of your favorite movie franchises. Considering you've dressed your vehicle out as the Ecto Prius?
That is correct. So now this is something that every car I've ever had has had a theme. And when I got this Prius, I just looked at it and something spoke to me. It said, this could be a Ghostbusters car. So let me just show you what we're talking about here. All right. So this is the back end here. We got our Ghostbusters series of bumper stickers. We got the license plate holder. We got the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man hanging from the rear view. And then if you look at the upper corner there, we actually have, this is something kind of special actually, right here, right behind me. This is a decal from 1986, a real Ghostbusters decal. So it's vintage right there. Now, the other things that I've added to this is we are powered by Ecto Cooler, recently returned to the market. I'm still waiting to get a taste of that sweet supernatural nectar. I have not been able to find it out in my neck of the woods. If you've got it, send it to SequelQuest Studios. We'll thank you for it. But I've also outfitted, it is officially the Ecto Prius C. So as I ride down the street, people know what's going on, and I give them one of these. And but either way, you know, we have a good time on the road. But that is, like I say, definitely one of my favorite franchises. As you see, got T-shirts galore. I just ever since I was a kid, I couldn't get enough. I'll get back into a little bit of that, but I'm just curious. Jeff, where do you fall in your Ghostbusters fandom?
Well, first off, I do want to go back to the controversial new movie. Is this really a controversial? I mean, with movies that qualify as controversial, come on.
You haven't been online, Jeff, is what we're learning. People cannot stand the fact that this is an all-female cast, and just the comments that are being made are ridiculous. The cast themselves have already had to make formal responses and basically said, these are sad people that hate themselves and hate life, and we feel sorry for them that they have to spew their hate online. That's basically what the response has been. So you haven't heard any of that yet, Jeff?
No, I mean, I have. I don't know that would quantify as controversial. I mean, there's always people that don't like, things.
Sure. Yeah, change is difficult.
Okay. I understand it's a different spin, but
yeah.
So anyway, so for me, for Ghostbusters, for me, like, very opposite to Adam, I suppose. I did not like this movie when I was a kid. Like, it was very much like Beetlejuice was, where I saw it probably when I was too young, and it scared me, and so I never watched it again. And I think even if you go back and you watch that first movie, there's a lot of pretty intense moments in that first one where it's like Rick Moranis and Sigourney Weaver being transformed into dogs, and I mean, like, even the scene where Rick Moranis gets torn to shreds by a dog that no one else can see, like, that's pretty intense, and that scared the heck out of me as a kid. But then I started watching the cartoon show, and I did enjoy the cartoon show, although it's still something about cartoons where someone gets brainwashed freaks me out. There was an episode of G.I. Joe where Shipwreck got brainwashed, did the same thing to me. So I still specifically remember a Ghostbusters cartoon episode where there was a haunted house and Ray, it's always Ray, gets brainwashed. So anyway, I had a very back and forth sort of a relationship with Ghostbusters, but then as an adult, I've come to appreciate the comedy and the different levels, the fact that they got these 4 different kinds of comedians to kind of interact, and yeah, Bill Murray kind of steals the show, but at the same time, each one of the characters that are created, Winston is always my favorite. Ernie Hudson can just sit on a stool and stare at the screen, and I would love every second of it. So, yeah, I really loved it.
Jeff, going back to your comment about the possession, I had a quick comment. The only criticism that I've heard live of Ghostbusters in general, like whether it's the reboot or otherwise, is just recently I came across somebody and they saw my car and I was like, they're like, oh, you're excited for the new movie. I'm like, yeah, I'm just excited in general about Ghostbusters. This was before the new movie. But he said, you know what, I'm not. And I was like, why not? He's like, I have a real problem with possession. Freaks me out. So it's like, you're not the only one, apparently, Jeff. Like, there's other people out there that don't like the idea of being possessed, and if Ghostbusters portrays that, they can't get behind it. I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah, well, and it's funny, too, because there is something about Ghostbusters where in both of the movies, something like that happens, where someone that is an ally is turned supernaturally into a villain, and they don't really do a whole lot with it, but, yeah.
Well, in Ghostbusters 2, my favorite character, Dr. Janosz Poha, he has some pretty great moments as a possessed guy. I mean, he definitely gets out there and he does the bidding of Vigo the Carpathian. So, I don't know. I feel like he did a lot more. But you're right. Like with Sigourney Weaver and Rick Moranis in the first one, they didn't do so much as just try to find each other, right? That was kind of their main
Well, and even, I mean, role. Ray gets possessed in the first one, too, right at the end when, she takes possession of him, and there was...
Well, yeah, that's Ghostbusters 2 also. Ray gets...
Right, exactly. Like I said, it's always Ray. Something about Ray. Simple one, I guess.
Now, Jeremy, I'm curious because you're a little bit younger than us. So Ghostbusters was definitely, like Jeff said, Saturday morning cartoons. It was being promoted. Oh, speaking of which, I just happen to have a copy of Ghostbusters.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, on VHS from 1986. So you can enjoy your favorite episodes like Cry Uncle. It's fantastic. And how many minutes we got here? We got 25 minutes of exciting supernatural action. But since you did not get to see something like this, Jeremy, how did you experience Ghostbusters for the first time?
I remember watching some of the cartoons just randomly because they had 2 different cartoons that came up. There was the initial set that ran for like 4 or 5 years, and then they got played over and over, syndicated, whatever. Yeah. And then they did something in the late 90s, and this is the one I remember a little more, was Extreme Ghostbusters.
Yeah. The all-inclusive Ghostbusters. Egon gets a ponytail. You know, we got a guy in a wheelchair. We got a girl. You know, we got it's great.
Well, keep that in mind because that does kind of play into my pitch. So.
Oh, okay. But that
it's
was
a little teaser.
In a way, then was Extreme Ghostbusters.
Kind of like I remember kind of watching. I don't remember any specifics, but luckily I've found Hulu has Extreme Ghostbusters on it. Oh. And the real Ghostbusters is available on the Crackle app.
It's also available on YouTube, like all the episodes of Real Ghostbusters.
Oh, wow.
You can find them. It's pretty amazing. Like, I guess because people taped them off TV so they could just throw them up there. That's where I've been catching up. It's just finding Real Ghostbusters there, in addition to my VHS collection. Although sometimes I like to pop in the old NES. That's right.
Of
Nintendo
course.
Entertainment System.
Of course.
Ghostbusters. It's a great game. Actually, this is terrible, and it does not play very well at all.
Wow.
So I do not recommend my Ghostbusters and NES cartridge. Now, can I throw this at you guys real quick? The original Ghostbusters, I don't know, there's a little bit of trivia here that I think is kind of interesting before we get into the main meat of the show. Do you guys know the original title of Ghostbusters when Dan Aykroyd put together his original script that he was writing?
I've heard this. I just don't remember what it is. What is it, Adam?
It's
Jeff, do you know it?
Ghost? Not busting, but anybody? Smashers. Ghost Smashers was the idea.
Ghost Smashers.
And it was going to be basically a Blues Brothers reunion. You were going to get Belushi and Aykroyd together again, traveling across dimensions in space in the future. And they didn't have like the proton packs and stuff. They had these like magic wand things that kind of stuck out of their fingers. They just held and they would blast ghosts. You know, like it was a really strange concept altogether. And it wasn't like anything they invented, ghostbusting. It was just a natural thing in the future. And so, and originally, like I say, Belushi was supposed to be in it. You know, he passed away. And then they liked the idea of the movie, but Ivan Reitman and the director, and Harold Ramis, who played Egon, kind of got together with Dan Aykroyd, and they helped him kind of make it a more realistic film, or just, you know, a pared down film, to where there was I think Ivan Reitman said it was going to be $300 million in 1984 dollars to make, so they brought it down considerably. But I was going to ask also, there's some alternative casting for this film, which would have just changed it completely. Do you guys know who the original choice was to play Winston before Ernie Hudson?
No.
I do not.
Nobody? Eddie Murphy was in talks, because, you know, the Saturday Night Live, you know, history, they had Bill Murray, they had Dan Aykroyd, and they thought, let's get Eddie Murphy in there. He's huge, but he declined. But can you imagine that movie with Eddie Murphy showing up halfway through? Like, he would have just taken over.
Yeah, he would have taken over.
And it's also the thing that I've always heard is that Bill Murray, from what I heard, that like Bill Murray's character, I don't know that it was supposed to go in the direction that he saw, like that it did, because from what I heard, he improv'd almost all of his lines. Like
That's
it was
true.
just kind of like, go Bill, and he did, and ended up stealing the show. But like you said, I mean, it was really the rest of them that came up with, I mean, not Ernie Hudson, but it was really Dan Aykroyd, Ivan Reitman, and Harold Ramis that came up with it, and then Bill Murray, ended up becoming the star, really.
Yeah, I mean, he's the one everybody remembers, absolutely. And like, even what's interesting is he was, even before he agreed to do it, they went to Michael Keaton. So Michael Keaton was approached to play Venkman at one point, and he turned it down, which is, again, just a little interesting bit of casting. And last one I'll throw at you, do you know who they originally wanted to play Gozer at the end? So, you know, we got the ballerina with the, you know, with the crew cutter, the flat top,
Pat
right?
Benatar? Or does it just look like Pat Benatar?
It just looks like Pat Benatar.
Oh,
it was actually a male actor. of a similar build. It was Paul Rubens, aka Pee Wee Herman.
Wow.
They wanted him to play Gozer, but almost because Gozer was going to take the form of Ivo Shandor, who was the one who created Dana's building and the one that allowed the gateway and everything to be created up there. So like he was going to take that form originally, then they changed it when he declined again. So just again, all these things that if you just imagine the film like the way it was originally conceived, would not have been this beloved comedy classic that we look at now. So I just throw that out there as an alternate idea in your head. So I have one more bit of something special. Now, Ghostbusters 2, do you guys enjoy that film as much as the original? Is that anything that
for me,
sticks
I
out to
don't.
you?
I did not like the second Ghostbusters. I was kind of disappointed because I felt like they went a little darker and they didn't do anything really like new and fresh with it. It didn't seem like it got as good a reviews, but I know like Adam, like you've said, it's your favorite sequel of all time, right?
It is. I think it took what we loved and then kind of amplified it and added a few new characters to a similar formula. But I love it so much. But Jeff, if you did enjoy it, maybe you just need to look through the image of a viewfinder, and it might give you a whole new take on the film. This Ghostbusters 2 gift set coming your way. All right, so
it's actually coming my way, or was that just a metaphor?
Well, I love you, and if you want it, I'll send it your way. However, in the meantime, I'm just going to take a sip of my hot thermal beverage mug and enjoy the 3 balloons for the kids. All right. All right. I think we're ready to get into this.
Yeah.
Video up as much as we can.
Drink.
All right, time to transition to the meat of our show, the pitches. Now, each host will have 90 seconds approximately to pitch their version of a current, and by that I mean created today, sequel to the Ghostbusters franchise. After the pitches, we'll vote on the best one, and the winner will give their full plot layout while the rest of us fill in and add to it, making a coherent and fully fleshed out story ready for filming. Let's start off tonight with Jeff, and then we'll follow that up by myself, and then Adam will pitch last. Jeff, let's see what you got.
Okay, so I would travel back and make this movie in the year 2000 because I can't make this movie without Harold Ramis, who sadly passed away in 2014. So in the year 2000, it's been technically it would be 11 years because it was 1989 that Ghostbusters 2 came out. But unlike Ghostbusters 2, where we caught them, I think it was 5 years later, and they were all kind of like doing weirdo things and doing, it was kind of a sad like post their big rise. So anyway, in this one, they're actually all very successful. Egon is a professor at some very prestigious university. Peter has become a dad with Sigourney Weaver, and they're doing the whole marriage dad thing. Ray's the only one, although in Ray's eyes, I guess he would be a success. He's a crackpot that lives in some sort of a cabin out in the woods who's always kind of investigating the paranormal ghost stories and stuff like that. And Winston, of course, is still a Ghostbuster. But 10 years later now, the Ghostbusters still exist, but they're a new breed. So you've got Winston and then 3 new people. And he's kind of like shepherding them into raising up a new breed of Ghostbuster. But then Ray pops up because Ray is convinced that the year 2000 is that Y2K is actually the work of some sort of a demon creature ghost thing. And so he ends up kind of doing all of these things, and that ironically the police end up calling the Ghostbusters to stop him. So it ends up being kind of this Ray against the Ghostbusters, and they're the ones that have to restrain him and everything like that, which ends up then Ray kind of leading them into figuring out that, no, it is actually a giant ghost that's in charge of Y2K, and it's going to bring her up out the end of all the world. So they have to call on Peter, and they have to call on Egon. So now you've got these 2 generations of the Ghostbusters that have to work together in order to save the world from the demon Y2K.
Wow, okay. I wasn't sure if going back to 2000 would work, but tying it to Y2K, that's some fun right there. Gotta have that world-ending thing, right? So there it is.
Of course, and it builds on Independence Day, which no, it doesn't, not at all.
Coming to a theater near you.
All right. Okay. My pitch. We are going to bring the extreme Ghostbusters cartoon to life on the big screen, including the 3 kids or 4 kids if we want to add to it. Killer Watt is going to be our big bad guy using smaller ghosts who possess the bodies of other people to pretend to be a rival ghost-busting crew trying to discredit our Ghostbusters, all the while pulling off his evil master plan of releasing the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man and the rest of the ghost from the containment unit in order to destroy the city. Old and new join up to save the day and pass the torch. Roll credits.
Okay, there it is. All right, well.
Oh, and I have Ghost Egon.
Oh, okay. So, again, gotta have Harold Ramis in there, right? Okay. All right, here we go. Here's my pitch. Comes with episode art. So,
Your advantage already.
Yeah. So after the events of the second film, Ghostbusters, they're given a full pardon by the governor of New York, and he actually starts an official government agency called the GHST, which is the Governor's Hostile Spirits Task Force, that's funded by taxpayer dollars. And Egon and Ray become the heads of the department, with Winston as kind of the field leader, training the next generation of Ghostbusters to take over. And they have a cop-style reality show that's called Busted, and the purpose is to kind of create PR and goodwill for the ghostbusting in the community. But the real breakout star is Louis Tully, who has gone from kind of the nebbish nerd to a full-on commando ghost hunter. So then basically we catch up, and now it's 25 years later. All of this has been going on. Egon has passed away, and they're dedicating a wing of the Museum of Natural History. It's called the Spengler Wing, and it's being curated by Dr. Janos Poha. But they're doing all this in the wake of kind of a threat from the government that they're going to be shutting down the GHST department. But people are trying to make the best of it. Venkman and Dana come back from Montana, where they've been living a quiet life as wheat farmers and raising Dana's son Oscar. And he comes to the big city with dreams of joining the Ghost Academy, but he hasn't told his parents yet. Meanwhile, we also learned that Egon had a daughter who is basically his complete opposite, super outgoing and real witty and fun. Her name is Layla, but she's trying to distance herself from her father's legacy. So anyway, what happens is Oscar ends up going to the Ghost Academy. He kind of rises to the top of his class. He's the big star, which kind of rubs this other guy the wrong way, whose name is Robert Storm Tully, and he's Louis and Janine's son, who's been kind of the hot shot of the ghostbusting community as of late. And so now he's there, kind of got to get off to the wrong foot with Oscar. Oscar has a roommate named Danny Peck, who's Walter Peck's son, who guards the ghost containment unit. That's kind of his main job. So ultimately, we get the real threat. Ghostbusting actually gets shut down. The department is shut down. We find out Walter Peck was behind the whole thing. He gloats over it as they go to a smelting plant and melt all the ghostbusting equipment. And just shortly after that, then a ghost revolutionary named Ebenezer, a.k.a. the Nez, starts taking human hostages and demanding freedom for all the ghost captives that are held in the containment unit, claiming that the governments of the living have no jurisdiction over the undead. So he's out there claiming he's going to kill all humans to raise his army if they don't release his people, from their bondage. And so essentially what happens is Ray trains the younger Ghostbusters now on how they can get in and help them save the day, since there's no more equipment or ghostbusting department. And they go and retrieve all the equipment from the Spengler wing, and they go out there, they save the day. Ultimately, in the end, there's some mystery as to who let this ghost militia out of the containment unit in the first place, who's the traitor in the ranks, and will this inexperienced and outnumbered team be able to pull together and save the world? All this and a heartfelt visit from the ghost of Egon Spengler in my full pitch for Ghostbusters 3. So there you go.
I didn't have the other thing pulled up while either of ours were going.
It's all good. It's all good. So, there's 3 of us. And
Now, hold on. You think on this. You can't vote for yourself.
I know.
But in the meantime, now, before we vote on a winner, we have a goofy break for a non-show sponsor. The Infinity Gauntlet Oven Mitts. Thank you to Loot Crate for these amazingly awesome keepsakes. They were recalled for unsafe use in the kitchen because apparently those people were not worthy to wear the gauntlet. But guess what? They are an awesome addition to any Phoenix driver this summer. When your friends are not wanting to drive due to the heat and a hot steering wheel, like Thanos say, fine, I will do it myself.
Oh my God.
Great work.
Now, do you have 2 or do you just drive one-handed?
Well, they only come with the one hand, so it'd be kind of awkward putting a right hand on my left hand and trying to drive.
I'm sure there's some power there that you could pull from one of the Infinity Gems to cool off your other hand.
Right. I mean, it was only 135 in my car the other day.
Now, before we get into this voting, before we really make our final decisions, I just want to ask one thing here. Can you deny a kid who
No, you're not going to pander.
Look at this. This man, he has loved Ghostbusters all his life. He is so committed to everything that they stand for. Oh, I'm just kidding.
Everything they stand for. Who's the blonde guy?
The blonde guy is my brother-in-law.
No,
I know, he doesn't look very happy either.
on the box, not standing at your party.
Let's take a look here.
Is that Egon?
That's Egon. Don't
Why
you know?
is he blonde?
That was the whole thing in the cartoon. He had a weird blonde white pompadour. That was crazy. Yes, I did own the proton pack at one point.
Right.
So.
I think you actually lost a vote after showing that. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's so rough. That's so rough. All right. So we have just
Adam, whose story do you want?
Well, that's the thing. So I really love this Y2K angle. I think that's a really interesting thing. I think we could take it even in another direction. So I think I'm going to vote for Jeff's because that one jumped out at me. I was like, oh, Y2K, that's awesome.
All right, Jeff, what is your vote?
And I'm going to vote for Jeramy because I like this idea of the ghost, the bad guy Ghostbusters.
Okay. Wait, so we have one for Jeff, one for Jeremy.
Yeah.
So, and he can't vote
Because
for
I
himself.
can't vote for myself, I'm going to go Adam, which
Perfect!
puts us in a 3-way tie.
I would like to point out, though, there are a lot of similarities between our 3 pitches, where we all have the original Ghostbusters and the new team somehow coming together to face some sort of a bad guy. So I feel like even if we don't come to a consensus on the overall, that we can pick and choose and maybe mishmash a little bit.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking. Because, Jeff, both you and I had Egon as a professor. I mean, in my expanded pitch, Egon would have been the official professor at the college, but he was going to have, like, Ray be the front. So it's it's Ray's class, but it's Egon that does all the heavy teaching, like Ghost Egon.
Plus, I was just going to say, Jeremy, I don't know about you, but I think with Adam, I think you also had Winston as the one that was shepherding the new class, too, right?
Yeah. So when you said that, I was like, oh, interesting.
Yeah.
We're definitely on the same track there.
Well, what if we start with that? What if we just go, person by person, we figure out what each one of the original people are doing, and then we come up with the big bad guy, and then we see what we got.
Okay. I think that's fair.
Are we okay with that? Will that take way too long?
This is definitely something new for the show.
Yeah, we never had a tie before. Yeah.
No. I thought about calling in somebody to be our tiebreaker, but I was like, nah, let's go with it.
I was gonna say we should have got Justin's vote ahead of time, knowing he wasn't gonna be here. But,
so what? He just has to vote blind. I just
yeah, he did.
I would have made the call. I would have said, "Oh, you don't have to vote for me, but I think you could trust this man."
Exactly.
No, anyway.
Good call.
So, so let's
okay.
Yeah.
So it sounds like the easy one is Winston. Are we consensus on Winston being, because Winston seems like, I mean, I always love that about Ernie Hudson's character is that he was just there, not a scientist. He was just there because he needed a job. So it seems so perfect that he would be the one that he still needs a job.
Yeah, absolutely. He's that.
Let's do it. Yeah.
Ghostbuster who's out there trading. He's got his apprentices. I think that's perfect. And yeah, he would just kind of keep running the day-to-day stuff since, he's the blue-collar guy out of all of them, right?
Right.
So I think that's perfect. Now, the question is, do you guys feel that they should...
Yeah, the real question is what time period are we setting this in? Because we got to decide on Egon.
Yeah,
because
I feel
we don't have Harold Ramis. So...
Yeah. I
what
feel
I
like
was
it's better just to accept that he's gone and everybody acknowledges it respectfully, but it's not something where they dwell on it for too long or we recreate him CGI or something. I just don't think that's necessary.
Well, and my one idea too, like with Jeramy's, was that when you were talking about having like the bad guy Ghostbusters that were possessed, or whatever, so that they were working on the wrong side, that you could even incorporate now the new team of Ghostbusters, the girls. And so if we do set it today, even if, like you guys said about the whole some people being anti-whatever, is that we could, at the very least, still acknowledge their existence if we set it today. But again, like, I loved Harold Ramis in it, so, like... Yeah, that's a tough one for me, but I guess I can see it either way.
I mean, it's just the reality. They teased us for a long time. We were going to get a reunion of everybody, and basically you had Bill Murray holding out, and we never got it. So I think we just have to deal with it. Modern day, Harold Ramis is no longer around, but it doesn't mean you can't get the rest of the group back in, and they just kind of give him that nod how they do it.
How I gave him a nod in his death was... shortly before they more or less disbanded, or just before they finished cleaning up the city, they had encountered the boogeyman, and I was watching the cartoons, and the boogeyman was a big thing for Egon. Like, he was scared of it as a kid. The boogeyman recognized him as an adult, and the way they dispatched of him in the cartoon wasn't all that great. But I think what we could do was Egon self-sacrificing himself to take out the boogeyman and finish that, and that's what allows him to. Okay. He goes out heroically and is still hanging around as a ghost, or can make a cameo appearance or something that small maybe never pays off. I don't know.
That was the part that I struggled with, because I felt like that was somewhat disrespectful to Harold Ramis, because I wanted to do the same thing. Like, I was like, oh yeah, at Egon they had one like last adventure, then Egon got lost in that, but it just seemed, I don't know, like I could see where it's a tribute, and at the same time I feel like, oh, do you just mention it lightly and move on? But I could get behind that, just to say, and if the boogeyman, maybe we make the boogeyman the big bad, so maybe there's some stakes, and then Egon shows up as a ghost at the end as kind of a thanks guys, you did right by me type thing. Maybe that's
you're right.
Okay.
The ghost thing makes me a little uncomfortable, but what if, like, tying into what Jeramy's saying, like, well, I think that is what you're saying, is that so that the big bad is the one that killed Egon, and then like we don't need the ghost part, because again, making a like, because then even thinking about it, so you'd have to draw Harold Ramis and
well, it could be just that there's like some type of artifact of Egon's that like shows up at a certain place, and they know, okay, Egon was here and he gave us the nods, rather than recreating the look, the visage of Harold Ramis. So I think that's good with what we do with Egon.
Okay.
Okay, we can do that. But
Yeah.
like Egon's big thing was he was able to identify the individual and different paranormal situations and come up with a way to dispatch them. So who on our crew now would be kind of filling that role? Is that something we grab one of the newer Ghostbusters?
Well, I think that could even be the like. Well, again, it's been 30 years or whatever, or 27 years. So it's like, yeah, the whole new generation would make a lot of sense. So it would be kind of that idea of why the old generation would need the new generation. So it would be to have, that transcendent. I mean, I guess the new one would already be a guy down because Ernie's with them, or Winston, I should say.
Yeah, well, and I think because the initial idea is kind of saying like, well, doesn't Ray really fit that role? Weren't Ray and Egon really partners in the whole thing? They kind of filled the same function, but personality-wise, they provided something different to the dynamic. So I feel like Ray just kind of continues that idea, but I like the idea of someone coming in that maybe is the technical wizard.
Yeah. Okay,
that
so
is the new generation that they need.
Well, the nice thing is, too, is that you've already... Because then the Egon was definitely that bookworm, had the glasses, and that sort of a caricature. And so it's like, with that space vacated, we can now, one of the new ones, we can have more of like a bookwormy type of person, because we don't want to have like a second Ray or a second Venkman or a whatever, but we can have a new Egon, kind of. But we wouldn't call him the new Egon, because again, that would be kind of...
Well, okay, so in the cartoon, they had one of the girls was enrolled in Professor Spengler's class, and she'd read all of his books, all of his research, like dozens of times. She knew it almost better than he did. So maybe we could pull her in, and she's the tie between the old team and the new team, because she hits it off well with Ray based off of the knowledge aspect, and helps them work together, I guess, something like that.
Well, I can see that. So that's my other question here then. So we talked about Winston's still a Ghostbuster. There's still work to be done apparently. So where is Ray at this point then? What is Ray up to? Because in Ghostbusters 2, they saved the day, but there was no guarantee maybe that they were going to continue necessarily. Like, it seemed like they were back. Everybody was happy with them. But Ray still had Ray's occult books, like, was he still running that business and ghostbusting on the side? Does he retire after 27 years,
Maybe we do have Ray at the college teaching, and he's picking out the new recruits for Winston.
So in this scenario, do you guys want it to be then that there is like a ghost academy, like ghostbusting is official, kind of like in my pitch, where it's government funded and they just have, basically the training ground where they bring in people that apply, just like if you want to be a police officer or anything, fireman.
I don't know. For me, like, that kind of seemed like that was one of the things, and I mean, I'm open to it, but that seemed like that was one of the things about Ghostbusters, is that they were the outsiders. They were the, not losers, but they were the ones nobody else listened to. So it's like, now all of a sudden, if they're a government agency, I mean, I guess that does change things. And then, like
that's the new dynamic.
Out.
Yeah, because to me, like, they were always kind of had the battle with the government, right? And then the government would eventually give in and realize we need you. And so to me, I feel like you get into the mundane ideas of, like, politics and all that kind of stuff that I think they would really respond to, that would fit well with kind of their humor and their commentary on society that exists in the Ghostbusters movies. That's why I kind of threw that in there, because it seemed like it's an extra element that they would enjoy playing with.
Well, what about this? What if we, instead of, like, and it's also the thing too that for Ray, like, it's always the funny thing that Dan Aykroyd in his later career doesn't play anything like those characters anymore. Like, he was kind of, I mean, Ray is so hapless, and he's always the, Ray, what did you do? Like, that's just who his character is. These days, he's always the, like, gruff, like, sarcastic, whatever he is. Like, what if he does an about face, and he, like you're saying, where it's a political organization, like maybe it's like sort of like a black ops part of the FBI, where it's it's like they're the X-Files, they're the whatever, and so Ray has almost become a politician, So in a certain way, what if Ray is like the bad guy? Not the bad guy, but he's that government one that's like, you know, whatever.
He
he's
lost
the man
that
now.
free spirit aspect, and now he's kind of got to regain it through the process. That's not bad. I like that, because he was the heart of the Ghostbusters, and now that heart has kind of grown cold, and more calculating and more focused on keeping the business of ghostbusting alive and stuff like that. Yeah, that's good. Now Venkman,
at the same time, with Ghostbusters, it's always been they're the outsiders, the outliers. Nobody wants to believe them. They're spooks, and I would say like Winston could be like picking and training new people to kind of fill the spot, but it always felt like they would stay small time.
Well, that's kind of what I was thinking.
Like if they were going to be threatened that they would be shut down or some law would be passed, maybe they would have joined up with the government, just to keep.
Right. Or even like, and that's what I was thinking. Like, even think about like the X-Files, where the X-Files, the Mulder and Scully were part of the government, but they were part of that government that still nobody listened to, and they were still, even though they were government officials and they had to deal with their bosses, and there was the conspiracies and blah blah blah. But they were still, in that loop. So it doesn't. They don't have to lose that outsider, nobody likes them sort of a thing.
Yeah, just because they're government funded doesn't mean they're all of a sudden everybody accepts them and likes them. It's just kind of a next evolution of where they were. So unless you feel like it totally deflates the attitude of the film, like I said, I think it's just a new twist that it gives them to work with, and mine humor from.
Okay,
Jeremy,
and so Ray would be our political, I guess, insider, kind of the face of the Ghostbusters franchise kind of thing.
Yeah, he's the one who has to basically schmooze and keep everybody happy on every side, and at the same time he has to be a little bit more, kind of cutthroat here and there than we expect him to be, or than we've seen him in the past.
Okay.
Now, do we want to get, because now as you're starting to talk about Venkman, because Venkman is, and that's one of the things I think we loved about Bill Murray's character, is that he was like, kind of like the leader of the anti-authority person, where he was the one that was always picking the fights with, making fun of the politicians and then schmoozing, but at the same time making fun of the mayor and everything like that. What if we create a conflict because now Ray is with the government? Maybe he and Venkman have a falling out. And that's where Venkman has gone.
I would agree with that. I definitely see that as probably the reason for Peter walking away from them.
Mm-hmm.
So he's kind of been distanced for a few years.
Anyway. Yeah, like I don't think Venkman was never like 100% behind it anyway. He was always just in it for Dana, to save the day for Dana.
Yeah.
So I feel like, honestly, like at the end of Ghostbusters 2, like I did in my pitch, like, and it was in Jeff's pitch, I believe, as well, like they totally just got married. They went off to raise Oscar. They wanted to get away from New York because Dana is obviously a magnet for supernatural forces that come in and try to disrupt their life. So I feel like plus the fact that Bill Murray does not want to be in a Ghostbusters 3, but I think if you give him a weird enough cameo, if he comes in and subverts the expectations of the audience, that's exactly what he wouldn't want to do. He would just want to mess with us and give us not the Venkman we want, and that would make him fulfilled artistically. And so that's why I had him as like a wheat farmer. He just comes in, he's obsessed with wheat now, and he just talks about that all the time. And he would be in the movie literally for 5-10 minutes, but we got our Bill Murray fix, and he said, look, I did it for you, I'm out. Like, I know this is dream scenario, but I just feel like realistically that's what would happen if you were going to get him in there. You'd have to entice him that way.
Yeah, I'd see him less as a wheat farmer and more of a weed farmer.
Yeah, or some sort of a hippie. I weird, and I was even thinking like you could go full on Wes Anderson and have him as Steve Zissou, who lives out on his little boat and he's exploring the ocean. Whatever. He's still a wackadoo.
Yeah, but either way, like he kind of comes in. He's, maybe they go out to him at some point just to reach out. And do you guys like the idea of Oscar being part of this? Like grown up baby Oscar is now continuing kind of in the legacy, or what do you think? Do you like that concept?
It seems so strange to say that a baby really bugged me, but something about that baby Oscar, just his eyes, and way too docile most of the time. I don't know.
You like your babies to have a little spirit? You like
yeah, it's true. Come on, ghost nanny, dude, give it a little attitude, man. Maybe start crying or something.
Well, we wouldn't have to have the baby, so we could have anybody,
Oscar.
really.
Seriously, who names their baby Oscar? I mean, I apologize to all you Oscars out there, but like...
Named after a hot dog, you poor man. You poor man.
Or the Grouch.
Yeah. But like, I just think like that's like Venkman is there and you see where he's at, but then what we take from that is, Venkman and Dana happy with life, but Oscar not content being a weed farmer or disappointed that that's what his parents chose to do with their lives. And maybe he's like a real like uptight kind of upstanding citizen, and he just happens to be visiting when Ray or somebody comes to approach Venkman. And then from there, we have would you guys be up for the Spengler wing of the Museum of Natural History? Like, that's what brings everybody back for quick
I like
cameos,
that, except for the other way. This is the Museum of Unnatural History. Why would it be natural history? This is a supernatural museum or something. Because that's the thing, too.
Works.
In the Ghostbusters world, like, they can't really pretend anymore that there's no such thing as ghosts. I mean, there's still marshmallow everywhere across the city, probably. Plus, like, this entire museum got coated in pink slime. I mean, they could be a museum of all this stuff.
Sure, yeah, exactly. That's what it would be, is all the artifacts. That's why I thought it'd be so fun to have Janos come back, and he is the curator, but he knows nothing about it. So he's got like a ghost trap on display. He's like, this is for the Ghostbusters get hungry. They put the food inside. Is heated up. It's very good. The salmon, the broth. And they eat it. It's very good for a Ghostbuster. Like he's just
less a curator and more of just a tour guide.
A tour guide
is what I would say.
I know that's your guy. You wanted to get him in there.
He's got to get in there. Come on,
that would be the one thing that it's like, and that was my real hesitation about Oscar is that there needs to be some sort of a separation because this is the new generation, and if the new generation is literally just the kids of the last generation, it's kind of like wah, wah.
Well, that's what I thought. We had like one,
fresh.
Like
one is
one
fine.
Kid.
But that's why I said if you did that plus
be the one
and whatever his name was, kid.
Yeah.
For me, that's a little much.
I stacked
Janos,
it on my pitch. I know.
Cameo. Like, let's not make him a major character. He's does a cameo. The Ghostbusters fans cheer, and then.
Yeah.
Away we go.
And then, so what about Rick Moranis, Louis Tully, coming back into this?
Well, I doubt we can get him back.
That's true. He doesn't act anymore.
That's true. Yeah, he's retired.
But at least there could make. So maybe in that case, maybe just like as a reference to, like.
Now, the one thing I will say about that though is, at the time when it was like really close to happening, the Ghostbusters 3, like they said they literally had everybody on board except for Bill Murray. And even Rick Moranis said he would come back. So I feel like this is probably the one property he would do that for. So
he's kind of been on the fence about Spaceballs too. So I don't know how. Yeah, he's still kind of on the fence about that.
Okay. I thought he was just done. But either way, like I was even thinking what you could do, which would be kind of fun, like a fun little nod, is that in one of the scenes with Ray in his government job, is he could even have like some sort of a chart of Ghostbusters or former Ghostbusters or whatever, and then you could have pictures of all of them, including all the ones from, what was it called, The Amazing Ghostbusters, or whatever your other shows were.
Extreme.
With the ponytails and the girl in the wheelchair. So there could be those photos of those people, and just to like, oh, these are all the people we've trained in the past.
And maybe that's where we do our Egon tribute. Is they've got the wall of past Ghostbusters, and it's plaques of all the originals, and then the listing of all the other Ghostbusters that have come since then, up until that day. And that's kind of Winston shows the new recruits. These are the people that started the whole thing, and this is where we're at today.
Yeah. So
and then
yeah,
from there, yeah. So the conflict we're going with then.
Well, even before that, since we're kind of doing people right now, what about our new Ghostbusters? So it sounds like we still have 4. So we'd have Winston, Oscar, and then 2 more. And I feel like
I think with Winston, he probably is transitioning to more of a kind of like the Batman Beyond situation where he's on the monitors, over the headsets, kind of thing.
He's like 75 years old now, isn't he?
Right, something like that. So maybe like his first few times he'll go out with 4 new Ghostbusters, so there's 5 on the training missions to start them off, and then it would be just the 4 of them with him in their ear, kind of thing.
Okay. And so when we look at Oscar, like the role he fills, I think he's kind of like the aw shucks, maybe like kind of like, I would say he might be stuck up, but maybe he's more just like kind of the Ray that Ray, isn't anymore.
And maybe I was seeing him more as like the punk, because I would see as like, because it's reactionary against Venkman.
Okay.
So, because Ray and Venkman, even though Venkman is the rebel and stuff like that, but he's not that kind of a rebel. So for him to be real laid back, it doesn't feel like that's a complete split from his dad. Where I think if he's the, rebellious punk, yeah, you have the rebel part still, but it feels like that's a little bit more opposite. Like, he's rebelling against his dad.
And he mellows throughout the course of the film. Like, he kind of gets more respect for something, so where he kind of starts off a little brash, but maybe, becomes more heroic and more even-keeled as the film goes on, something like that.
Right.
Okay. And then we talked about having a bookworm character, right? So,
yeah.
Jeremy, you were saying like a female character that...
Yeah, in the cartoon, she was kind of Asian American, I guess, would be the way to put it. And...
So we have kind of that look. Now the question that I had was this, I would want to see somebody like her, definitely as an innovator and providing new gadgets and new ideas. And I'll just say what one that I had in my pitch with Layla, Spengler, in my pitch originally was going to be not very good at the basics of ghost busting, but she was really good at improvising. And in one scene, what she was going to do, they were having a hard time trapping a ghost, with the getting him in the stream, and she would just open up a trap and just swing it and chuck it, and then just have the ghost get sucked in and then shut it. And they're like, why did we never think of that? So they created the trap launcher was going to be a new type of technology they would use based on her innovation. So I would see something like that coming up, in field training scenarios, or just she comes in with all these specs and says, hey, I've been thinking about this for a long time.
What if we did the other way though? Because I was thinking, because again, this is a comedy. What if she's an innovator, but she's really bad at it? And none of her things work, and so that's where the comedy is. But then at the end, it's she has something really awesome, and it or maybe they all finally click at the end. So then it's comedy up until the end when it's just awesomeness.
Then it gets
cool. If the whole show is awesomeness, then that's again, it was more of a comedy. So
right. I would suggest with our 4 new Ghostbusters, we have one, the bookworm, and she comes up with the ideas for the new tools. You have one that's more of the actual builder of the tools, and he can create anything. And then you have one that's probably your field commander, I guess. He would call the shots, and also be your improviser. And then your 4th would kind of not be good at all of them, but he's your comedy relief.
Okay.
What if? Because I was more thinking about, again, if this is a ragtag bunch of misfits, then they wouldn't. That would ultimately be where they would fit in. Because if you think about the original Ghostbusters, they weren't good at anything. I mean, none of them were action heroes. None of them. I mean, Egon would keep inventing things, but they always kind of ended up finding themselves not really in the right place at the right time or something like that. So that was kind of my thought, is that if you, I don't know, as opposed to having a crack team of Strike Force people, instead you have people that don't do it very well.
Yeah, well, I think it should be they all have the potential, and then, you say, like they all have kind of their character flaw that keeps them from being great. So like Oscar probably is like the sarcastic comic relief guy, and he has the potential to be a leader, but he always kind of lets his temper or whatever get the best of him, and it messes up all these situations. And then you have, you know, the bookworm girl who kind of, you know, is kind of timid. Maybe she loves it, or no, maybe she just, what you're saying, Jeff, she's enthusiastic but not very good at what she's trying to do. And then you have somebody else who's maybe a little bit more timid, but like has a natural talent for catching ghosts or something. You know, like who's like the builder guy.
What if we have? Well, because now my other two thoughts were that, again, thinking more about those character flaws as opposed to what they would actually do well, is that of having, because I agree with you, Jeremy, like that should be the dynamic that we land on when they all click. But leading up to that, I was thinking about having one, like, I mean, I guess it's kind of the old cliche where you have one from the streets who is just like, he had a rough growing up and blah, 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 and then so he would have the conflict, or she, I guess it could be a girl from the streets. And then you would have one, like, the opposite, where it'd be the pretty boy from the rich neighborhood or something like that. You could do that, those sort of elements. The other one, because I guess they already did the working man with Ernie, which I loved, but to do the working man again, where he's like, I found another. Actually, well, see, again, you don't want to just repeat Ernie, because it would be funny if you get a bunch of 20-year-old kids and then they recruit this, like, 45-year-old man who's just like, yeah, well, okay. But again, that's what Ernie Hudson was. So I love it. But
funny, actually, you have an older, a middle-aged Ghostbuster mixed with these younger kids, but they could learn from his wisdom type thing. Like just again, not wisdom as a Ghostbuster, but just in life, he maybe helps them kind of, or one of them kind of, you know, maybe he's the one who helps tame Oscar and just be like, look, kid, I've been through a lot. And, you know, like kind of the attitude that you're spewing out here isn't going to lead to good things type thing. I don't know. That could be fun. So, all right. So I think we'll develop this as we get towards like the ultimate bad, the big bad. So are we sticking with this idea that Egon died again on a mission and it was the boogeyman, and now the boogeyman is kind of amassing forces or something to do some big deal? Like I was wondering if it should, with the Y2K thing, Jeff, the direction I was thinking of taking it for the threat is Y2K, but not setting it in 2000 necessarily, but saying that the ghosts, like the whole concept of a ghost in the machine, like actually doing that, like ghosts are invading our technology and they're taking our technology hostage, because we live and die through social media and everything else now, right? So if ghosts were able to be in control of our electronics, what would we do? That would be a real threat, seemingly, to all of us.
That's kind of where the Killer Watt played in the cartoon. Like he inhabited like vacuums and toasters and was tying up the Ghostbusters at certain things. And
well, it was the same thing. It makes me think about like, well, one, like Ultron. That's what they tried to do with Ultron, but they kind of downplayed it. But then, which even they said Joss Whedon got that. There was an episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer where they bring, I don't even remember what the thing was called, but this ghost comes in and starts seducing, what was her name? The sidekick? Whatever her name was. Yeah. He starts seducing her through the internet, which back in 96 or whatever, it was like, ooh, look at, she's on AOL. But yeah, to use something like that where he, and that, because again, it always was funny that in the first two movies, the ghosts were never like malicious. I mean, I guess you figure they would be eventually, but for the most part, when you looked at what the ghosts were doing, they were just causing trouble. Like the one ghost that was just running through the park, like that's all it was doing. Or like even Slimer. What was Slimer doing? Slimer was just like eating food. Like he wasn't like hurting anybody.
Yeah. And in the movies, he wasn't a pet like he is in all the cartoons.
Yeah,
it's true. But either way, I mean, they didn't have ghosts that were like, ripping people's spines out of their backs or something like that. That wasn't the kind of ghost that they were. They were just like throwing books in the air or something. So to have a ghost that's like going on Amazon and shipping everything by drone or like doing whatever, like that would be very in line, I think, with Ghostbusters.
Absolutely, and I think that's what it should be for the most part. But then you learn that whether it's Killer Watt or if it's the Boogeyman or whatever, like ultimately there is something
so maybe,
more nefarious.
Yeah, maybe it's Killer Watt is recruited by the Boogeyman in order to break out these other ghosts to distract them, so that he can get out of wherever Egon trapped him in, to break him out of his own dimension, so that he could become back to this dimension and begin tormenting children again.
What about like a step or a step beside that or whatever? What if he's trapped into this dimension or something like that, and the way that he can get out is through the internet? So like the internet is his portal, and so it's like he has to be released through the internet or whatever.
I can see that, yeah.
That is the one thing that I would say, and I don't know, I know in the cartoon they changed it, but in the movies, they had these huge big, like Gozer the Gozerian and Vigo the whatever, and the Carpathian, so it's these big names, and then Killer Watt. It just, it doesn't quite come up with something more spooky sounding, or even the Boogeyman. Like, everyone knows about that, but should we use like a real, like, I don't know, I was looking into like famous American ghosts, and it was like, and most of them are a little too creepy for.
Well, that's the thing. Like, well, what if it was just
Lizzie Borden?
Exactly. In mine, I had the big bad ghost called Ebenezer, but he's like the Nez or something. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of like this kind of old-timey, creepy name that you could play with.
My only hesitation with Ebenezer is that everyone's thinking of Scrooge, and there's ghosts already in that story. So. But I like. I mean, like, but like a big. I mean, again, they always used, Gozer the Gozerian and Vigo to use something like. I was even thinking of like Vlad the Impaler, except for.
But we had Vigo. Vampires. We already had Vigo the Carpathian.
And Vlad, too many V words.
Yeah, too close.
Vlad the Corinthian. No, way too close.
But I like the concept of, okay, so Boogeyman's trapped, Egon trapped him but lost his life in the process. Now he's been trying to get out, so he's using his minions. Now the last thing I'll say, that in my pitch I had a thread where somebody was letting ghosts out of the containment unit, like had like a deal with them. And I'm wondering if it could be something where, like, there was kind of a deal struck with a human, not necessarily, a ghost who's on the outside, but a human that's able to sneak in there or gets some type of communication, and is trying to open the containment unit again to let, the big bad out, the Boogeyman.
Yeah. What if we go, and this is, I mean, again, I'm assuming most people have not seen that episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, so if we steal stuff from it, I feel okay. But, like, what if we go along those lines where the Boogeyman starts, like, or whoever it is, the bad, starts seducing or whatever the nerd girl, but does it under the guise of, like, that she thinks it's Egon's spirit speaking to her. And so then he, like, starts saying, like, that's how he convinces her to let ghosts out or whatever, and that,
So we already have a good in, as long as she's still alive, with Janine, the receptionist, who tried to spark something up with Egon.
Yeah.
Maybe she's just still hung up on him, and this would tempt her into trying to let ghosts out of the containment unit. She'd already have access.
That's true.
Yeah. And then she has kind of that limited, simple understanding. She would just go for it, right? She'd be like, oh, if Egon says this is the right thing, I'll just go do it. Right. And I'm sure Annie Potts is up for it. So I think that works well.
I think it would, and it would also be funny, because, again, Janine was another one of those characters where it was just like, she was the receptionist at this, like, what the heck are you a receptionist at sort of a business, because, like, and that's who she was, and she was always there. So the fact that she would still be there 30 years later, it just would be perfect, because now she's like in her 60s, and
So, and this is like the ultimate thing is, I think what it should be is, Janine opens it, it lets all the ghosts out again. Now, the concept is, okay, well, how do they resolve it? How do they get all the ghosts back in? I had kind of a concept initially that there was this idea of, like, you could create kind of a vacuum for spirits through the containment unit, that there was a danger of ever having an open trap near the containment unit, because it would open up that vacuum and it would not allow it to be sealed except from the other side. And so the idea was that one of the Ghostbusters would have to sacrifice themselves, because it would suck the spirits out of the living as well and pull them through. And the idea was that one of them would have to sacrifice themselves, go on the other side, and shut it after all the other ghosts were already sucked back in. I don't know what you think about that. The idea was that the Ghostbuster was going to sacrifice themselves. In this case, it was like Louis Tully's son, and then Layla takes over at the last minute saying, no, your family's here, mine's already on the other side. But then at the last minute, Egon from the other side closes the trap for her and saves the day. And I was thinking that could be like Egon's moment. You know, again, you just kind of see him faded in the background as kind of an illuminated being, but he kind of saves the day, and that's how we get all the ghosts back in to kind of get everything where it needed to be, including the boogeyman. But I don't know
kind
what
of
you think
silhouetted, I guess. Yeah.
That's not bad. I do like that. And then, or not even that. I mean, it could just be an arm, and then they just know whose arm that is. But as far as like that moment of someone's going to have to sacrifice themselves, I feel like that's way too heavy for Ghostbusters. Like that level of
Could be.
Yeah, like that. I mean, like I'm a big fan of self-sacrifice, but yeah, it just doesn't seem to fit again with the style. If we're sticking with the style of the first two of this kind of like, you know, supernatural comedy, then.
But if you think at the end of the first one, they do get kind of serious. Like, they were ready to sacrifice themselves, remember? Like, when they were going to cross the streams, there was the threat that they were going to die, and they all basically say their goodbyes to each other. So, I mean, that was a moment in the first film with a similar tone. Yes, it was jokey up to that point, but that last minute when they're like, pleasure working with you, Dr. Venkman, you know, see you on the other side, Ray. Like, they basically
thought the entire world was going to be destroyed.
No, it was supposed to be them. Like, they were going to be just obliterated. You know, remember Egon explains crossing the streams, and every particle in your body is going to explode simultaneously.
Oh, I thought it was every particle everywhere.
No, it's just them. So that's what I'm saying. So I think it really does fit. You know, it's not going to be super heavy-handed. It's just going to be like
that's okay.
that heroic moment. Yeah.
Sure. And then because I would even do, like, I was even thinking, because then you would need some moment where. So that the boogeyman or whoever is working through Janine to have her release these ghosts, which is causing the upswell in ghost activity, and then something happens where it's like, he convinces her that like Egon is waiting, like she just needs to open it all the way, and that's what lets him finally come out. And then, to shut it again would be the resolution. Yeah.
Jeremy, you good with that? Does that sound like a good climax?
It is sounding pretty good right there.
We're getting close.
Okay. Well, let's get into casting then. I think we're at that point. I'm very interested to see what we go with here with the new breed.
Okay, Oscar.
Oh, okay. Well,
we'll play Oscar.
I have to admit, now the tough thing is because it should be someone that looks like an offshoot of Sigourney Weaver and Bill Murray.
But remember, Bill Murray's not his actual dad.
He's not the father.
Bill Murray's the stepdad, yeah. He had a different dad, so...
It still needs to look like an offshoot at least of Sigourney Weaver. So, because for me, when I think... And it's because I've been watching Sons of Anarchy, so when I think of the bad boy, I'm thinking of Charlie Hunman, who's the main character in Sons of Anarchy, who is definitely the bad boy, but I don't know if he's too old at this point.
Yeah, a little old. I mean, age range, we're probably looking 20 to 26.
Right.
Is the key demographic there for them?
Yeah. My one thought I had was somebody like, who's that guy that's on New Girl? He was in Jurassic World. Yeah, do you know who I'm talking about?
Plays Nick on New Girl.
Yeah, like I feel like
is that he played, like, in everything I've seen him in, he plays that character from Jurassic World. So he's not the bad boy, he's the, like...
I see.
The, like, I don't know, charming doofus, maybe?
So we're trying to find somebody that has an edge, like a comedian with an edge, then.
Right, yeah. Well, like, can we, I mean, that's been the Ghostbusters thing. Can we continue to mine the
Saturday Night Live
wells? I haven't watched Saturday Night Live in way too long, so...
Well, that's where they got most of their Ghostbusters from for the 2016 version.
Right. And
they rated all the ladies.
So, but yeah, I mean, if you think, I think there's a guy on there like Taron Killam, someone like that, like, but I don't know if there's anybody there that's really a breakout star, unless we were going to get, like, for one of the characters, maybe Bobby Moynihan, who's been on the show forever, and he's pretty hilarious, and he's the
but at the
chubby
same
fat guy.
time, those guys are all probably early to mid 30s.
Yeah, but I mean, this is like, yeah, and I know what you're saying. We want a younger crew. But like Oscar,
I mean, unless you
at least 27.
unless you want to bring Goldberg in as our older Ghostbuster.
Goldberg
the wrestler?
No. Oh.
Goldberg.
I don't know why his
from
name
Mighty
just
Ducks?
left. Yeah, from the Mighty Ducks.
Oh, really?
Keenan Thompson.
Oh, Kenan Thompson. I mean, not for Oscar necessarily.
No,
but
not for
he would
Oscar.
be a great. I mean, he's older too at this point, but I think he would be a great fit.
Right, because you were talking about having an older guy kind of join their younger crew.
Mm-hmm. And now the other person that came to mind, because I think he was actually discussed at one point as being, when they were talking about rebooting, or not rebooting, but kind of passing the torch. And I feel like Jonah Hill could have a real good, because like he's slimmed down, but he also definitely brings that attitude with him. He's not always like, lovable every time. He kind of could have an edge. So I was wondering if he might be a good thought, because that movie, with Ben Stiller and Jonah Hill was in it, and then you had our buddy from Swingers, who am I blanking on right now?
Jonah Hill. No, come on. Let's.
Jonah Hill.
Bad boy? No. He's never the bad boy. I mean, let's like again thinking about the guys from Sons of Anarchy is who I'm picturing. So, and that's not Jonah Hill. Now, what about? Let's get crazy now. What about Shia LaBeouf?
He actually ran through my head first. I thought you guys would poo-poo that, but I thought he would actually be good at this point because
Could he be Oscar?
Yeah, sure.
The wackadoo that Bill Murray raises?
Yeah. All right, Shia LaBeouf.
Shia, you're back. You're back in action.
Nice.
Congratulations.
All right, we need a pretty boy in this, don't we?
Yeah.
Are we doing the pretty boy and the bad boy, or how are we?
Yeah,
well, I mean, Shia would be your bad boy, and then who's our pretty boy?
I mean, are we giving this one to Channing Tatum, or is it too small?
No, he's too old. He's too old.
And he's not pretty boy. He would be too much bad boy.
What? My wife thinks he is the hottest thing ever.
Yeah,
but
I'm
not saying that. I'm saying.
But he's bad boy hot, not
exactly
good guy hot.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, okay.
Should we go Zac Efron?
Whoa, hey, that might not be bad actually, because I mean he's pretty, like The Neighbors, right? He's using his comedy,
right?
But he's going for the bad boy thing himself too. If we're going like pretty boy, like rich kid pretty boy.
But that's what I'm saying. But he would fit that really well if he just grabbed that character. If they gave him that attitude and said, "Look, this is what you're playing." I think just his look would inform that type of performance. Even like we just assume he's that way anyway.
A spoiled rich kid?
Yeah,
is that what
sure.
we're talking?
Yeah.
All
I mean, I know he's kind of like the nice guy in a lot of things.
Let me be honest, I haven't watched a lot of Zac Efron films, so...
You didn't see 17 again and all those other...
Well, either him or Dave Franco.
Yes, James's brother. What's his big thing right now? I hear the name a lot.
Now You See Me 2.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Oh, you know who that makes me really want then, though? Because I think he was in the first. So wasn't Dak Shepard in the first Now You See Me?
No.
He wasn't?
No.
Can we put him in this movie? Because he's great.
Shepherd.
Is he still?
Yeah.
It's been a while. Well, because I was thinking, even though I try not to cast him in anything, but Jesse Eisenberg is everywhere now.
That's true. I mean,
Yeah, but let's avoid him.
Michael Cera! Are we leaving him off the table?
Oh my goodness.
As the spoiled rich kid? No,
Well-
he's too awkward. He would be. If we just want an awkward kid, like that's.
Well, but he
his
could
gold
be the
mine.
third guy of the group. Maybe he's like kind of the mechanical genius guy, but he's like the timid, weird one that has to kind of.
Okay.
Eventually, he steps up to the plate and it like has an awesome move where he busts a ghost. You know. But
Okay, but we're also treading dangerously here
I'm so sorry.
in whitewashing the whole movie.
Oh well, okay. I see what you're saying. But
So
didn't we
we're forcing. Well,
Yeah.
the girl we were talking possibly Asian American, something like that.
Right.
Well,
We
how
got
old?
Ernie Hudson already, so.
How old is that Mindy? What's the Mindy Project girl? No, we don't like
Mindy
her.
Kaling, no.
No, I like
Already?
her, but she's.
Too
No,
old?
I like her. She's too old, and she's not. She's too. I mean, like in The Office, she's too like absent-minded. Is her character she usually plays? So it wouldn't be like I'm picturing more like ridiculously.
But Steve,
book-smart.
see, we're typecasting people. We're saying they don't have the ability to play beyond what we've seen them in. That's why I feel like maybe she's got that in there to be kind of like the nerdy, ambitious, but kind of like because that's kind of how we discuss that character. Is she's like ambitious but not that great, so she's kind of like ditzy in a way, even though she's obviously got book smarts, but maybe not a lot
she's
of common
book
sense.
smart, but not street smart.
And she
Yes,
is
that's what I'm
like,
saying.
and she is older than the rest of these people, though.
Yeah, I mean, but that's not a problem necessarily.
It's
I mean,
not?
just
Okay.
unless we're saying the girl has to be young and hot, and that's the point. But I don't think that's the kind of character we're casting. If we're not doing a Megan Fox here, so I feel like you get a character that maybe has a little bit more depth or something that's a little different. Hey, Nassim Pedrad. If we're going for Saturday Night Live alumni, and she's great, and she's got.
We are.
She's got a very.
But I do feel like. Right, I do feel like the comedian part. Well, I mean, I guess you assume if they're on Saturday Night Live, the comedian goes hand in hand with it. But the comedian part is more important than the Saturday Night Live part.
Yeah, sure. But that's what I'm saying. But Nassim obviously has the comic chops to play that kind of character.
Well, so I'd say I'm fine with both of them or either of them.
Yeah, I think that'd be good actually. I mean, Mindy, Nassim, but like Nassim's a little bit younger, I think. Is she? I don't know. I don't know how old Mindy Kaling is, but. I mean, I know, Nassim is what, 30, 35? I mean, everybody's going to play younger, maybe, either
They're
way.
about the same age.
Yeah, probably.
But I feel like,
so.
Nassim might play a little younger, but.
Yeah.
Are we too handcuffed in saying we have to have 4? Could we introduce a 5th in the middle of the movie kind of thing?
Well, what if there was a somebody who's training to be the I had a containment unit specialist in mind. So there's somebody who's almost like a security guard who just like watches the containment unit, makes sure nothing happens. What if there's somebody who like always wanted to be a Ghostbuster or doesn't get to be, they just have to be security and they're kind of schlubby, or maybe that's the Kenan Thompson character. He's like, I've wanted to be a Ghostbuster, ever since I saw him on the news or whatever back then, and then he finally gets his moment eventually.
Well, and that could be because I know we had initially talked about like the middle-aged man that would be amongst all the kids. So instead of the middle-aged man is just the guy that doesn't quite fit in.
Never gets his shot and then finally does. Yeah, I think that'd be good. That'd be good for Kenan.
Maybe that might. Well, I don't know if we want to put Kenan there, or maybe that's Mindy Kaling's role. She's kind of. She was part of an older crew.
But she's not that old. That's what I'm saying. I don't think does she seem super old?
Neither is he though, right?
Yeah, Kenan Thompson's not that old. I mean,
right? They're about the same as far as that's concerned. So it wouldn't be the age thing anymore. It would just be because now that for me, like I would believe Mindy doing something like that where she plays that like nobody's giving me a chance and they all think I'm a ditz or whatever.
Okay.
Like I could totally see that.
So you have another female character in the mix, and that
right, and
that's
she's
a good
the
way
like.
to go.
Which, and I mean, we could even have. I mean, you don't want to make too many extra characters because then the audience doesn't know what to do with itself.
Mhm.
But to have like her, where she's like a paranormal enthusiast, like maybe she's on the outside. She doesn't even work for the Ghostbusters. She just keeps wanting to get in, and so she keeps bringing like, "Hey guys, I heard about this," and they're
And they have to rescue her. Maybe she goes out and tries to catch a ghost herself at one point with homemade
She goes
equipment.
vigilante.
Yeah, they have to save her.
She makes her own proton pack, but it's just like lightsabers or lights or something.
It's like a Hello Kitty backpack with some, some cables.
With like a
coming out.
super soaker.
Yeah, exactly. With like holy water in it instead. Yeah, something like that. Okay. All right, so I think we got that. Now, who's going to be like the boogeyman, or is that just more like a voice and a CGI character that we sort of see in the shadows, like for our big bad and the Killer Watt type? Oh no, we're not doing that now because Janine is the one who's being seduced to take care of that.
So boogeyman, who voice wise could we want?
I think it'd be cool to do a voice, but like, I don't know if it's that vital. Because that's the thing, too, for me, like, that I'm not terribly excited about the new film, is the new film looks like it's just a CGI fest. Which the old ones, like, had more of that look. Like, you could connect to Vigo, even though he wasn't my favorite villain. You could connect to him because, like, he was a, person. You could see him. Like, as opposed to if he was a cartoon, like,
In the castle of pain, I sat on a throne of blood. All right.
But since a lot of the film, he'll probably be just a voice or an
email message. Yeah.
So what
but I
about?
just feel like he'd have to have a minion he talks to so we can understand what his ultimate plan is, so that we see it, even though Janine doesn't see it. The audience needs to understand what's really at stake, so there's suspense when she's doing those things. So maybe he's just like, maybe he is somebody who's just again on the other side. That he has like his little like sidekick jerk, that he messes with. But that's what I'm saying. Like, could it be somebody like? I feel like it has to be someone with a great voice, but that has comedy stylings behind them. It isn't just like a Lawrence Fishburne, who seems to do every deep dramatic voice.
That's true. No, I've got my two. My first one would be of course, and then it just leaves my brain. Clancy Brown. Clancy Brown would be my first one. Because all he's been known for the last, 10 years is SpongeBob. And come on, man, you've got to give him more than SpongeBob.
No, he was Lex Luthor.
Yeah, but they remember him for SpongeBob. And he even says when he walks down the street, they're like, oh my god, it's Mr. Squidward
Patrick.
or whatever his...
Yeah.
No, he's not Patrick, he's the boss.
He's not Patrick?
Mr. Krabs.
Mr. Krabs,
I misunderstood Clancy Brown's contribution to SpongeBob.
Yeah.
My apologies.
But my second one would be either Clancy Brown or Sean Bean. Those would be the two voices I could see.
I'd say I'd like the idea of him having an accent. I think that always adds to the evil. So you get a British guy doing it. I think you get a little something extra for your money. So I would vote Sean Bean for something like that.
Would be Irish,
I don't know. I was thinking maybe like Tony Todd or
unless we could get Mark Hamill to do it, because he does great, his evil Joker voice.
Evil
and he
Joker.
does voiceover work, but I think he could do a variation that could be something really sinister, but really entertaining. I think Mark Hamill, because he's back into acting on like a larger scale now, to put him in there would be kind of fun.
Mark Hamill doesn't really do the big, deep voices.
But does he have to be? Could the boogeyman be more maniacal? Or more, a little bit more twisted.
Well, except for he's more seductive, though. Well, actually, you know what, though? That is the thing, is that he is pretending to be Egon. Mm-hmm. So for Mark Hamill to do, an Egon impression I could believe him over.
Well, if we're gonna do that, then you get Maurice LaMarche, who did Egon on the real Ghostbusters.
That's
the voice
what I was thinking
from Pinky and the Brain, and he already does like his Orson Welles kind of deep voice, but he could mix that with a little Egon when he needs to. I think that actually could be. And of course, the fans. That would be an Easter egg for the fans that we would really enjoy. So Maurice LaMarche is the boogeyman. All right.
Yeah.
Power to the voiceover workers.
Yeah, that's
all right. So, director-wise, do we have a director in mind? Any music?
Is Ivan still working? If Ivan's still working, I want Ivan Reitman.
Or we could get his son, although his son doesn't necessarily follow in the footsteps of his same style of film. But because Jason Reitman in Ghostbusters 2, he's the one who told the Ghostbusters they were full of crap. And they say, well, some people have trouble believing in the paranormal. No, my dad just says you're full of crap, and that's why you quit. Jason Reitman.
Is this something where Dan Aykroyd would direct?
Does he direct? I don't even know. Has he directed in the past? It seems like something he'd naturally do, but I don't recall ever hearing of a project that he was at the helm of other than writing it.
Yeah, I know he's done some writing. Let me see.
Yeah. But, I mean, do we want to keep it in the camp or do... Because, like, that's the thing is, are we trying to go for kind of, like, the classic Connection old school feel, or do we want, like, an innovative new director who kind of comes in, like, I mean, not like Judd Apatow, who's, like, an established attitude already, which I don't think fits this universe, but, like, is there somebody who's, like, a more current comedy director or, actor/director who would work?
I mean, for me, which one, by the way, Ivan Reitman is still working. He actually is producing the current Ghostbusters movie. And his last movie was My Super Ex-Girlfriend. No, I take it back. Draft Day. Oh, yeah, it was Draft Day. That wasn't bad.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was his last movie.
All right, Ivan, you're back.
I love Ivan Reitman's movies. And the thing that I like about him, he's not necessarily a comic director. Like, I mean, I guess he is. He did, like, Dave, and he did... But his comedy has a little bit of, like...
It always has heart. Yeah,
exactly.
Like he
and
gives
so
you
many
serious
comic
moments.
directors, I don't know that they get that. So.
Yeah. Okay. Ivan's back.
All right. Anything specific with music? Do we want anything special?
I like the idea, which one, and that's the thing too. I mean, we didn't really talk about it. Is that the theme song from the original Ghostbusters was so? I mean, they played it on the radio all the time. I think it was a #1 hit, wasn't it?
And my mom used to do aerobics to that song. Like, it was that big a deal, and like it was even nominated for an Academy Award that year for best song, from a motion picture soundtrack. So I mean, it was huge.
Yeah, I'd love, and I mean, it's kind of like I've always appreciated the Mission Impossible movies for the fact that they've hired a different band to do a different take on the Mission Impossible theme for every movie. So I think that would be kind of neat to get somebody else to do a version of the Ghostbusters theme song.
Oh, so kind of like they did with the Ninja Turtles. They've had a different take on it, a remix or something like that. Maybe just mixing it together.
Did they redo the Vanilla Ice song? Go Ninja, go Ninja, go.
They worked it in, yeah.
Yeah, they worked it in the end.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. But yeah, so like I guess I was saying, who's a modern artist that we think could give it? I mean, Kanye?
Bruno.
Huh?
No, avoid him.
I avoid Kanye at all costs.
I know, I always throw him out there, but
he's
he's talented, even if he's a jerk. Come on.
Is he? Is he? On a side note, have you seen his rant on Ellen about all of his brilliant ideas?
No.
See it on YouTube. It's brilliant.
Yeah, I've
brilliant.
seen it.
Walt Disney is dead. What? Anyway, but so okay. Kanye, not, but like Bruno Mars would be an interesting take.
Bruno, maybe even like Calvin Harris. He's more of a DJ that would kind of remix it with somebody modern.
I was thinking full on re-recording, but I mean like, yeah.
Or maybe a collaboration between the two of them. I don't know.
Or
does it have to be a male vocalist?
Timberlake?
Could it be a female singer? Could you get, someone in there like, a Katy Perry or something to give it kind of a pop edge? Because it was a pop song when it came out.
It was, but it's too dancey. I mean, I guess Katy Perry is dancey.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like,
right.
You get somebody and she could have some fun with it. You can imagine the music video for it, with her. She would like go full on.
Dancing sharks.
So let's do Bruno and Katy Perry each do their own version.
Okay.
That we'd mix in during the rest of the movie, and then during the big climax would be you'd have the duet.
It crosses
like a
over.
Third remix, like Crossing the Streams. You'd have the remix cross.
Nice, very good marketing there. I like it. Okay.
Jump to the top of the charts.
Yeah,
well, I just want to throw out a shout that. So last time we combined. Lady Gaga and Miley Cyrus. This time we're combining Katy Perry and Bruno Mars.
There you go. Hey, it's what we do. We like to bring people together. Collaboration is the name of the game.
That's what we're all about.
That
it is. Queen and David Bowie, Rihanna, and some other people, I'm sure. All right.
Okay, that's what I was going to say. Any final words?
I do want to say, although I can't say them, or I will not say them on the air, but my two favorite lines, which one, Ernie Hudson, maybe the best line he's ever said in his career. So when he looks at the bear, he says, "Man, I've seen that would turn you white." I just giggle every time I hear that. And of course, cats and dogs living together.
Mass hysteria. Yes. One of the great lines. And I'll just end on this. Look, Jeff, Jeremy, if someone asks you if you're a podcaster, you say yes. All right.
All right, on that note, it is time to go. Find us on Twitter at SQPod. On Facebook, search SequelQuest. Instagram, we're at SequelQuest. Or just search SequelQuest, one word, on iTunes, SoundCloud, TuneIn, Overcast, or most of your podcast listening apps. Email us your requests and suggestions to sequelquestpod@gmail.com. And until next episode, keep your eye on all the sequels, and we'll be back soon. Hold on, the music is not playing.
Hey! When you're walking down the street and you see a little ghost, what you gonna do about it?
Oh, you're there you go.
Oh, well, I guess we're gonna have to take control.
We thank you for listening to this episode of SequelQuest and invite you to continue the fake movie fun on social media. Submit your ideas for future episodes to sequelquestpod@gmail.com or SQPod on Twitter. The films and characters discussed on SequelQuest are the property of their respective studios and license holders. No copyright infringement is intended.
This has been a presentation of the Retro Network.